because it seems like we're headed in the wrong direction. The time is now. I think the power of coming together and uniting and really thinking and being strategic is going to be very important in the coming years, right now, in the coming years. So I'm excited, LaDonna, to be here in studio. And I know we got some heavy hitters coming on today, too. So I'm going to sit back, relax, and kind of enjoy the ride.
Yeah, we're happy to have you.
Hey,
Absolutely. So just a couple of days ago, we had an amazing VIP dinner cruise right at Navy Pier, not just a rock throw from the Sable Hotel, which is
Absolutely.
owned by one of our members.
Absolutely.
And at the VIP dinner cruise, there were so many thought leaders, executives, corporations, business owners, politicians. I mean, the experience was so real and the food was great. My DJ, I call him my DJ now because he's been our DJ for the last 3 years. Shannon was there, but we had like Commissioner Donna Kelly. No, not Donna Kelly. I'm
Donna
saying
Miller.
it wrong. Donna Miller. I'm thinking about Melinda Kelly, who was there, and I actually texted her this morning. We also had the mayor of Waukegan was there. There were so many people. Why don't you tell us about the room, everyone that was in the room, and what was going on?
First of all, let me say that we had the WVON team.
Oh, yeah.
So, LaDonna, we had you, and we have, who else do we have there?
Atiba Buchanan. We
Atiba
hosted
Buchanan.
it. Yes,
They hosted the-
WVON.
And, and we couldn't have had two better hosts, quite frankly. They did a fantastic job. But along with them, you had a lot of dignitaries, a lot of people from corporate America, a lot of business owners. We had Alderwoman Janetta Taylor, who's doing an incredible job in the work that she's doing.
I like
And I
her.
love her energy and her passion for her people. And that's what we need more of, people who are not willing to compromise, but willing to stand up. Because I think it's too often in politics is about compromise. And I don't mean that we should never give ground and find balance. But I think when we see what we see around the country, compromise can be overstated in terms of just going along with the party, not going along with what's right with people. And what we need is people who will stand up and speak truth to power. And we had that. We had our corporate partners like Wind Creek. We had United Airlines. We had the list. I mean, let me see.
No, I got the list
You got
right
Okay,
here.
Ladonna's gonna give
Yes.
us the list because I can't remember all of them.
Man, it was
But it was good. It was a great time. People had a great time. I was able to sit back and relax, because my team had it handled. For the first time, I didn't run around like a chicken with my head cut off. I could enjoy my food and just
So-
relax and network.
it was great seeing you relax, Larry. I almost felt like did you ever get a moment where you felt like you should be doing something? Because you don't relax. You don't relax much.
No, I don't. But I didn't. What's the beauty of things in life is that it's like when you got kids who are responsible
Mm.
and you leave town and you know their history that they're going to do the right thing, they're going to do everything right.
Yeah.
And you got sometimes when you leave town that your son is going to be throwing the party. And you better get home in a hurry.
Ooh.
But I was so relaxed. I could just sit back and enjoy and just network. It was a great time, a beautiful time.
So our sponsors were Wind Creek Casino Southland, Constellation, ComEd, SLG Innovation, IDG Architects, United Airlines, WVON 1690 AM, Supreme Solutions, Simcoe Solutions, Copan Vodka, Farmer Media, Ray Consulting, Vaughn TV, and Illinois State Black Chamber of Commerce was so full of the right people that night.
Yeah.
Yes.
You really missed out on it. And I know, Lorenzo, you were working and
Yes, I
networking.
was working and networking.
Yeah. How do you do both? That's a lot.
But what was beautiful about this particular event, because I had the opportunity to attend other chamber events, the relationships were there. There were people that recognized me, and I recognized people from those past events. So that's the importance of attending a lot of the chamber events. You start to develop those relationships and that familiarity with folks.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Feel like family.
Yes.
And I'm going to tell you something, Larry. I was telling Lorenzo this. I have recently become an official family member of WVON. And I was already a family member of the Illinois State Black Chamber of Commerce. And I felt like I was bringing my two sides of the family together.
Mm.
I was almost selfish how much fun I had working with everyone. But shout out to everyone who came. And they were actually offered the opportunities to interview with Lester Blair. So
Yeah.
we've got those interviews coming. And I want to give a bigger shout out, or I don't want to say bigger like no one else mattered, but Amber Payton.
Yeah.
She is new to the chamber and she has already put out our reels. She was
Hmm.
recording, doing all the things that were needed. Okay. So shout out to Amber Payton for doing those things because you guys can go to the Illinois State Black Chamber of Commerce's
Yeah.
Instagram and see those reels and go to our Facebook page as well. So
Yeah, it was a beautiful thing. And it's great to have new energy. And that's what you want to be around, something that is growing, not stagnant. And when you find great people, and like Sherman Wright, who runs a incredible marketing firm. Let's now talk about, just for a moment before we get our guests on, let's talk about for a moment all of the Black media partners that was there on the cruise, because the chamber has a real commitment, and our theme this year is leveraging each other for growth.
Mm.
yeah.
And leveraging when WVON comes in and the chamber comes in, Manila Kelly and all of us come together, that's power. And when you have Black media like Dorothy Lavelle and all of the media people that were there, then we understand how powerful that is. And if we can leverage that power and make that power work for us, we can create more opportunities for ourselves and for our kids. But I think it's like having a cell phone and only using 10% or 20% of what it's capable of doing. And I think
Mhm.
what we're trying to do is leverage that, take it to the next level
Mhm.
where we really embrace, and we're going to be doing that, LaDonna,
Mhm.
with your help, with Deborah Farmer's help, with Sherman Wright's help, with all our team in media, with Amber, all these individuals coming together for us to be able to tell our story.
I think what has the misconception has been is that Black media is in competition with one another. And instead of having that narrative, we need to shape or reshape the narrative. Let me just give a shout out to all of those that were that we recognized on the boat. There may have been more that are, maybe bloggers or things like that. But we had Dorothy Lavelle with the Chicago Crusader, Deborah Farmer with Brown Farmer Media Group, Win Win Communications, Carl
Mhm.
West with MG Media, Sherman Wright, of course, Lester Blair, Swag TV, WVON 1690, the Citizen newspaper, and the South Suburban News was all in attendance. But the importance of Black media, I've been in media for a long time, and it's been fun, okay. But being part of, I want to say, with WVON and working with all of our media partners with the Illinois State Black Chamber of Commerce, you start seeing how the threads need to come together. Anyone who has been an elected official, anyone who has put the message out to the community, anyone who needed to target our Black community specifically and in the language that we can understand it, that comes from Black media. Everyone tends to write their press releases and go straight to ABC, NBC. They
Mhm.
want Fox to come, they want WGN. That's great. But the actual voice of our people comes from Black media.
Absolutely.
Black media needs to be strengthened and Black
Oh,
media needs to be respected.
Mhm.
absolutely. That is a part of our objective. Our critical objective is to strengthen Black media. And when we say that, I'll just make this comment and then we'll move on, is that we have identified areas where there's significant opportunities, where there's a lot of media spend, but they're not spending with us.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so the
Mhm.
chamber becomes an advocate to point that out, because we have the data. Not only point it out, but then to create the environment to where those individuals understand, whether it be universities, whether it be major corporations, that we have a unique position in the marketplace where we bring together the best and the brightest in media, and we're able to negotiate an opportunity, like we did with the lottery,
Mhm.
like we've done in countless with Wind Creek.
What did you do with the lottery? That's big.
Well, with the lottery, we sat down with the lottery ahead of time, before they won their contract, and we worked with the team to make sure that Black media was at the table. And I think they've been getting business from the lottery for at least 7 years,
Hmm.
where we went in and negotiated, make sure that Black media was at the table. And that was a part of the commitment they made to us in order for us to be an advocate for them. Not only did they help Black media, but they also, the lottery really, Alwyn's now is what it's called, they also hired a lot of African Americans that were doing business at the same time. So that's the beauty of the chamber. That's what the chamber brings to the table that few other organizations can. We're going to be doing the same thing with a lot of different other industries. So it's going to be exciting. And we're going to strengthen Black media because we know if we strengthen Black media, we're strengthening Black business and we're strengthening Black people, LaDonna.
I love it. It's funny how when I post on my social media that I have a show coming up or whatever the case may be on WVON, it's very different than when I've made my appearances at W other stations. They weren't the same. Everyone jumps up and down and gets excited when it's not us, but when it's us, people you hear crickets, and I want
Mhm.
that to change. We're going to change that, Larry, and I'm so happy that we're on that forefront. We do have a guest that
Absolutely.
is going to bring us the updates in Washington, D.C. And before we want to make sure that everyone is peaked and listening and has their pen and paper ready to take down notes because this administration is well, I would say it's nothing short of an illusion. But but I think Nigel will give us an update and tell us what's really going on. Ladies and gentlemen, do you mind if I bring him on now?
And let me let's say one thing
Sure.
about Nigel real quick. You know, we are so honored, Nigel, to have your team, Phoenix Strategy, as a part of our daily, weekly conversation because you give us a real sense of what's happening on Capitol Hill. And I want to give a shout out to you and to your team for just being there and being available to share with our listening audience about what's happening on Washington, D.C. that impacts all of us. And quite frankly, I don't think I've ever been more concerned about where we're at than this time in history. I mean, I've never felt like I'm trying to just get it out of my head. But if I don't think about it and listen to what's going on, then I'm afraid I'm gonna be collateral damage. So Nigel, man, I just want to say that to you, brother. Nothing but love and great respect for what you do. I'm glad to have you on the show, my friend.
Well, thank you very much. When the Honorable Larry Ivory calls, we listen and we answer. So thank you very much for that, and it is absolutely an honor to for myself, just directly, and as well for my team to be your eyes and ears in Washington D.C. And thank you for the opportunity to give the platform to be able to share with the community. And LaDonna Ray, it is a pleasure as always. I was listening to what your commentary was right before I got on. What you're talking about with regards to media and access directly to the community. In Washington, we have the old adage, all politics is local. Well, we have learned the good way and the bad way that communication and reaching the community and reaching people where they are is essential. And by being creative and being thoughtful about how we approach getting our messages to the community is absolutely essential. So please lean into this local radio, lean into these local markets, lean into modernize a podcast, blogs, whatever the modern way is that people are getting access to their news. We have to make sure we are leaning into that and we are leveraging black radio stations like yours and the work that you guys are doing in the community because this is the opportunity to speak directly to our community and get them engaged on the issues that are directly affecting them. So thank you very much for your work and what you are doing to make sure we can amplify and educate our folks on what's really happening.
Sure thing.
Thank you. Hey, Nigel, I was sitting here and I think I said, our agenda is just about set, but we're going to have to find a way, Nigel, either to fly you in
Hmm.
or to have you on big screen to give us the Washington perspective when we at the conference on August the 5th, 6th, and 7th. We got to find a way of doing that, because I
Yeah.
think it's important to have you on, Nigel, or your team on to talk about, you know, what's going on at this time, because I know things will be changing again. So I'm gonna sit back, relax, and you tell us what's going on, man.
Well,
And I'm just gonna enjoy the ride here. I'm gonna tune out. I'm not gonna tune out. I'm gonna shut up. I'm gonna let you do your thing, man.
well, Mr. Chairman, as you know, the things are changing in Washington almost by the hour. It's not even a weekly or daily thing anymore. And by the way, my team always stands ready and available to attend the Taste of Chicago. So just in case
You
that
got it,
happens to be
man. We can
coming up,
arrange something. We
you
can
know,
arrange
I
something,
just want
man.
to put that. I don't want to put that plug in there. Just let you know. Okay, so let's get to the larger issues, and then let's get a little bit more granular about the things that are really affecting us. So right now on Saturday, the Senate is working and meeting. They were working late into the night last night and the night before and so forth, trying to work on this big, beautiful bill, the budget reconciliation bill. They got a bit of a hiccup when the Senate parliamentarian determines the rules that governs legislation that comes to the floor. Threw a bit of a monkey wrench in their strategy by telling them that there were major provisions with regards to policy and spending that they could not do because it did not meet the rules of the Senate. So they had to take that out. What does that mean? Is that going to stop the bill? Probably not. They're going to find a way to pass this bill and change whatever they need to change in order to do it. Because this is the primary objective of this administration. This is the number one goal. Very little is going to happen in Congress legislatively after this bill for 2025, and probably less is going to even happen for 2026 before the election. So this is the flag. This is the number one priority for this administration to pass this massive tax cut bill. I think it's now well over $4 trillion worth of tax cuts that they're expecting to be accommodated by this budget reconciliation package. Okay, everyone loves tax cuts. No one wants to pay taxes. That sounds great until you deal with the program. So let's talk
Mm.
about what this is going to impact the communities. When you start talking about making cuts to government spending, yes, there is around $750 billion in government contracts that are awarded competitive contracts. A little bit over $1 trillion of what we call annual appropriations. That's what lobbyists like myself and others run around trying to figure out who's going to spend money where through federal agencies to keep government running and to run programs. That's a tiny, tiny, minuscule amount of what the government spends every year. Where does the government really spend its money? Really spending the money in what we call mandatory spending: defense, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and paying down the interest on the national debt. Now, the administration's already made it clear they're going to increase defense spending. So that's off the table. The rules governing Social Security has made that hands off, so they can't cut Social Security. They will try in the future, but not right now. You cannot touch paying down the interest on the national debt. So there's nowhere to cut there. So let's look at Medicare and Medicaid.
Mm.
We even have conservative Republican senators and House members coming to the realization that with the cuts that were programmed, that were proposed in the previous House passed budget, their constituents were going to lose significant coverage, Medicaid coverage. So this is the poorest of the poor, folks who need health care coverage through the Medicaid program. Let's keep in mind, yes, in a lot of states we have the Affordable Care Act, whatever we call it. Some states call it Obamacare. Some states call it, Kentucky Connect, because we don't want to call it Obamacare. But if you could afford to go onto the exchange without the supplement from the federal government, you wouldn't need to be on Medicaid. If you could afford private insurance, you wouldn't be on Medicaid. Okay? So the Medicaid is only for your poorest constituents. And now folks are realizing the impact that's going to have on their community. Right? What is this bill going to do in order to pay for these tax cuts? Now that the parliamentarian has made their change, what they're going to have to do is shift and try to figure out where they're going to get these cost savings from. And they're not going to be able to do it through the formula through Medicaid. So what can they now go to? They have to go back to a program that is not as easily defended and not as popular, which is SNAP.
Mm.
That's food assistance, folks. That's food assistance for working families that already have and poor families. That's where these cuts are going to come from. Medicare, Medicaid, and SNAP. We've seen significant cuts from federal agencies. We've seen significant cuts in other places, but that's not where the big dollars are. The big dollars are in mandatory spending. Now, what does this mean for your listeners? We already have a $35 trillion national debt. So when we talked about paying on the interest of the national debt, we owe $35 trillion. This bill is going to add another $3.7 trillion. That's Congressional Budget Office estimates. That's not Nigel. That's not Phoenix Strategies. $3.7 trillion to that debt. And now that's going to increase the amount we have to pay every year on the interest of that debt. Those are conservative estimates. With your cuts and with the cuts to programs, with the cuts to SNAP, with the cuts to Medicaid, with the cuts to the federal government, it's still going to add $3.7 trillion to the national debt.
Mm.
That is your kids taking on a credit card debt to pay for things that our parents and we are living off of. We are giving that debt to our children. What does that mean? It means everything is going to be more expensive for them.
Nigel, have those cuts already began to take place?
The cuts to the federal agencies have already begun. Not only have we seen significant reduction in staffing, we've seen rifts, we've seen mandatory cuts to workforce in federal agencies, massive cuts in certain agencies. We've also seen immediate cuts to government contractors who've been performing work at federal agencies and they've seen their contracts cut. We've seen even large global corporations, massive companies have to come back and renegotiate existing contracts that they have been performing for years. All right. So the cuts have already begun in certain places.
Nigel,
But
let
this
me ask a question.
surely,
I'm sorry to cut you off, but where are the physical conservatives on the Republican Party? Because this is their platform that reducing the debt was was what they ran on. So how do they justify increasing the deficit? I mean,
so,
I'm a little puzzled at that.
so this is a long-standing theory that tax cuts theoretically trigger economic growth.
Okay,
So by
theoretically,
cutting
I agree.
taxes for the wealthy and the wealthiest of the wealthy, that will then stimulate capital investment. And that will then drive economic growth. The economic growth will then bring in more income, which then can be used to reduce the debt. Now, has that worked? Never. But that's the theory that we continue to drive since the Reagan administration. And let's remember the last time we had a balanced budget and we were paying down the national debt in a real way, it was when Republican Congress worked with a Democratic administration in Bill Clinton and came together with a balanced budget, and they were able to start paying down the debt.
Now, here's the other thing I want to point out to our listening audience is that a lot of time when we think about the budget and what's going on in America, it can seem very complicated, but it really isn't very complicated. Because if you take a look at your own personal finances, if you got more debt, more credit card debt than you can handle, then that means that you got to make more income and you got to go out get another job. So a lot of times that when we take a look at where America's at, we just simply need to take a look at our own personal situation and apply that. And the government is the U.S. government is an individual, quite frankly. And the same thing that we experience, if we spend too much and we got too much debt, then we can go bankrupt. We have to file Chapter 11 or Chapter 13 or whatever the case may be. It's not a lot of difference in terms of that. Am I correct in that? In terms of it may be more complicated in terms of all the nuances, but fundamentally, you're talking about, you know, what you take in and what you spend out. and how debt impacts it, and how these things basically can cripple you financially that doesn't allow you to grow. When we talk about, the trade deficit and things like that, I try to make sure that people understand, even brothers on the street, I said, you've been playing this game for a long time. It's not overly complicated, but it is a different way of thinking from my perspective.
So that's an excellent point. And to keep along with that analogy, you would need additional income in order to pay down that debt. So the assumption is that this is going to create economic growth. The problem with that assumption is that ignores it's like my old economics professor used to say, in your previous classes, uh, the theory started off with all things being equal, and then you would learn the economic theory. Now that you've gotten to this level of economics, you start off with understanding all things are not equal. So theoretically, you would go and get new jobs, and the assumption is this is going to create more jobs in the economy. At the same time, we see massive job cuts in government, not only government employees, but the contractors that were working in the government. So, to the tune of tens of thousands of jobs. Layer in the impact of private sector job cuts that are not being well covered, to be honest with you. Thousands of jobs of layoffs in, whether it's from IT firms all the way down to service companies, right? That's been happening consistently for the last 6 to 8 months, and it's not been getting the coverage because of the noise in other places. But there have been massive layoffs from major corporations consistently since probably around September, October of last year. So where are the jobs going to come from? I was at a conference a few months ago, and Robert Smith, billionaire Robert Smith, brilliant guy, brilliant investor, leans heavily into the tech community, was on stage. And I got to tell you, he said the majority of the jobs of people, white collar jobs in this room, about 60% will not exist this time next year.
Mm.
And the hush that went through that audience of brilliant people with graduate degrees, master's degrees, all of that, and decades of experience, and come to the realization that they will be replaced by AI and innovation without any real clear pathway for new job opportunities, was the silence was deafening, right? So we need to be very careful about where we're looking towards business growth, job growth, economic growth. And Larry, this ties directly into what we talk about. Let's get to the business of our business, right? What is really happening at the same time is we are having these thinly veiled attacks on DEI. And
Hmm.
what the DEI attacks are really going after, and this gets to our second point, what I want to get to, which is the shift that has gone from executive orders to now we're seeing the implementation of these attacks, not only in the courts, but also in Congress, where we are having congressional hearings pop up all over the place attacking DEI, but in reality, it's not just the equity and inclusion and diversity and things like that, because DEI is just a bumper sticker, right? It's easy to attack.
Hmm.
But what they're going after is government contracting, is access to capital, is access to ownership, and access to business relationships in the private sector.
Now, Nigel, and I know we're going to have to, we're not going to be able to cover it all, but let me ask this question, and I want you to continue what you said. But one of the things that was, when they started making the government cuts, Elon Musk and everybody, Prince George is one of the richest counties in the United States in the black community, and a lot of the people that got terminated were from government lived in those areas. Am I correct in that?
Yes, I'm living that right now. I'm a resident in Prince George's County. And we are facing those challenges. We've got a governor who's being extremely creative and thoughtful right now, trying to figure out ways to absorb that talent, whether it's through, bringing in, you know, former government employees that used to work at NIH and the labs and so forth at NIST, and have them become teachers so we can improve the quality and improve the number of brilliant teachers that we have in our public school system, or getting them to universities and so forth. But keep in mind, those cuts also cut research dollars at Johns Hopkins University and Morgan State and University of Maryland and the entire University of Maryland network. Universities around the country are feeling these cuts. So where are the jobs going to come from to be able to absorb the workforce cuts that we are facing? And let's keep in mind, yes, Prince George's County, Montgomery County, state of Maryland, Northern Virginia, the DMV got hit very hard. But the majority of federal workforce, and I want people to understand this, the majority of the federal workforce is not in the DC metro area. So you're starting to see this impact throughout the country. But let's go. I want to get back to the DEI thing because there was a hearing this Wednesday in the Health and Financial Services Subcommittee of Oversight and Government Reform, titled "Sacrificing Excellence for Ideology: The Real Cost of DEI." And this was extremely concerning because, first of all, it was the topics that they were discussing. The witnesses, Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty. Larry, you remember that name? That's the firm that has been well funded in driving all these court cases and filing court cases against diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, against agencies, against governments, against private sector industry, around implementing DEI programs, and particularly around government contracting. They're going after supplier diversity programs. In this conversation, Chairman Glenn Grothman from Wisconsin, so he brought his folks in, his real focus, if you look at the opening statement and the had, was really around executive order that was signed by Lyndon Johnson in 1965 that implemented federal affirmative action programs to address past and existing impact of racial discrimination. They were essentially saying that everything was good. The Civil Rights Act is race neutral, which is fine. But any action to mitigate the effects that were created by the past discrimination and the current discrimination and the infrastructural discrimination is wrong and has a negative economic impact on the country since 1965 to now.
And Nigel, this is deplorable. We do have a caller. Can you mind if we grab him real quick?
Please, please.
Hey, Chris. Good morning. Welcome to the Wake Up Show. Can you hear me now, Chris?
Yeah. Good morning, everybody. How are you, LaDonna?
I'm doing well. You got a question for us?
And well, I just wanted to throw this out there. So the last out of the last 11 recessions, 10 were under Republican rule. And you have a bad bill when they have to do it at 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. A lot of the cuts also are to the military funding benefits. And the president had a semi-rally, birthday party rally, military rally last week that cost over 50 million, 100 million just to fix the infrastructure and the streets. And then they cloak everything in DEI, stuff like that. Also, not only is the jobs are down for blacks, the admission in population into colleges, or the colleges are also down. So it's an all-out assault, on trying to get yourself out of middle class or the working poor, and all those avenues are being cut off. And you wonder why they fight so hard to give the richest 1% a tax break, because it's kind of like a trickle down. There's no evidence to show that the President Trump last term, he had more GDP added off his policies in 4 years than Obama had 8. And with the tax rate being cut on the corporate side, there was no mandate to give the people more wages, more benefits. So it's like the rich get richer, poor get poorer. And based on the policies of this administration, it's gonna the wealth
Hey,
gap
Chris,
is
Chris,
gonna get even bigger.
Chris, we're going to ask: is there a particular question that you want to ask our guests? Because we're gonna keep moving because we only, radio time is shorter than everybody else time, so we got to make sure that if you
Good
got a
points, though.
particular question, to
Well, I'll say this, and thank you. You guys do a great job. I listen to your show every week. Great job. What would be a more appropriate way to attack the DEI situation? Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
So I would really, really like us as a community, and particularly as our congressional leaders, to get back to the facts and start talking about the economic impact that we are having. Yes, look, the reason we have the 8A program, the reason we have the DBE program, the reason we have MBE and state level programs and so forth was to address and mitigate the economic impact of racial and gender discrimination.
absolutely,
Period.
yeah,
Because we know for a fact, the facts are there. Larry, you brought up, well, what about the debt and where are all the fiscal conservatives? If the fiscal conservatives were serious about addressing the $35 trillion national debt and growing debt, they would go to the Kellogg Foundation study and figure out a way to implement their recommendations, as they've identified that $8 trillion could be added to the economy, to the GDP. There would be an $8 trillion boost to the GDP by closing the racial wealth gap. If they
and
were serious
Nigel,
about the
Nigel,
economy,
I gotta stop you, man. I gotta stop you because that's such a powerful comment. And and you gave me the numbers that when federal contracting, we get 1.35%, and Hispanics are a little bit better at 1.85%. It's just mind blowing that we're still fighting for crumbs to participate, whether it be in Democratic states or red states.
Mhm.
Blacks still don't get a fair portion of our contribution back to society. And we've been, actually, we've been floating the economy for quite some time based upon the labor that we've given from day one, man. It's really alarming the consistency, fighting in every war, doing all the things that we do for this country, and still can't seem to get equity. Now, I'm not complaining or crying about it because, it ain't what I do. What we ought to do is really, like we said, is begin to leverage each other and find ways of
And
having our own game plan and getting our own story out there and pushing our own. Go back to the times of Tulsa, where we create our own economic growth and sustainability by investing in each other in a way that we haven't before. It has to be a heightened sense of that.
and if I could ask this question, Nigel, with the attack, and we've called it that, with the attack on DEI, and with the this new initiative of the Civil Rights Fraud Initiative, uh, with the utilization of the False Claims Act of 1863, is this an extension of the psychological? Is this the extension of their psychological and economical warfare? Are we economically and psychologically at war?
I think we need to understand that everything that has facilitated the middle class and the opportunity to create generational wealth is currently being attacked.
Hmm.
So let me give some examples, right? So we talked about the $8 trillion the Kellogg Foundation identified by closing the racial wealth gap. McKinsey and Company has done a study that's been updated a number of times talking about the fact that companies that have robust supplier diversity and DEI programs, publicly traded companies, perform better with their ROI to their shareholders than other companies. So if you're telling me that we get better talent, recruiting, retention, promotion, supply chain, stronger supply chain, robust supply chains, competition that brings innovation and cost savings to your supply chain, allowing corporations to perform better, why aren't we having that discussion about why we are doing what we are doing the work to help these companies perform if that's our real goal? It's not our real goal. That's why we're having a false narrative discussion where they're targeting DEI as an acronym. because if the facts still show that we are trying to help these companies grow, then we would focus on those things. Harvard sustained this study. Citigroup, Global Perspectives and Solutions, Citigroup GPS, it's their think tank arm, found that in 4 years, between 2020 and 2024, and now projected between 2025 and 2029, so 4 years, if you only focus on these three categories: income, so jobs, right? Job income, how home ownership, and business ownership. If you close the racial gap between those three categories, we would add $3.9 trillion to the economy. Not the black economy, not the Hispanic economy. The entire American economy would grow by $3.9 trillion in 4 years if we only address those gaps in those key areas.
Wow, Nigel, you always come with a wealth of information. It is always a treat to tap in with the Wake Up Show, especially since you are coming with these updates from Washington D.C. Phoenix Strategies is bringing the business. I hope you guys were taking notes. I told you to get your pencil and paper ready. But Nigel, you'll be back next week, or you or your team members?
We will have somebody from the team, but I want to give you guys a heads up on one thing you need to watch out for this week.
Sure.
The administration has been rewriting federal acquisition regulations. These are the rules that govern procurement. They've gone through each section of what we call the FAR.
Mm.
This week, we are expecting them to release their recommended changes to what's called Part 19. So there's about 26 different sections, chapters. Like imagine a big book that governs procurement. FAR 19 governs small business, not minority business, all small business.
Mhm.
Okay? And we've seen some concerns so great that members of Congress have already started introducing legislation to protect specific provisions that help small business compete for contracts. That's all small business, right?
This sounds like they're trying to create a monopoly here.
That if the rule of two goes away, that says two or more small businesses in the same category can, like, it would be a small business set aside. You would essentially eliminate small business set asides.
Yeah.
So that would eliminate any real opportunity for small businesses to compete for federal contracts. At the same time, last week, the Secretary of Homeland Security Procurement, said that they now changed the rules so any grant or contract above $100,000 must be reviewed and approved by the Secretary's office.
Hey, Nigel,
That's
you,
that's that
you,
that's
you're
that's,
frustrating me
that's
now.
you're gutting small business, women owned, veteran, minority, everybody in that category
Well,
is now.
I'm gonna have to slide in, guys. I know we only have 10 minutes left, and we got a whole lot to cover, including the upcoming conference. We got to bring people's spirits back up, Nigel. So we'll see you next week. And I'll just everybody go look up the acquisition.gov. You'll look for part 19. I found it online really quickly, and it'll give you a description of what Nigel is talking about. Don't fret. There's still hope as long as you tune into the Wake Up Show Chicago.
Thank
All
you.
right, Nigel. Thank you so much. We'll
Thank
see
you,
you next
Nigel.
week.
All
Take care,
right,
Nigel.
take care. Thank you.
All right. Bye bye for now. Oh wow. Yeah, we got to bring
That's
these
a lot to
spirits back
unpack.
up, Larry, because it's like, huh? Why even try? But and because of this is why we're going into the conference.
Absolutely.
The conference is coming up. We were going to talk about the retaliation against your own businesses, but this is all this is external. And yes, of course, we should be speaking positively about each other and each other's businesses. The example came when I shared with you that when I mentioned that I was coming to WVON, too many people weren't excited. They were like, well, why are you settling? Come on now.
Yeah.
This is where they should be excited about being part of a Black radio station. The same thing with the chamber. The Illinois State Black Chamber of Commerce has a plethora of businesses that are members, and we should all be singing the praises of those individual businesses. That's why the conference is so important.
Yeah, it is, LaDonna. And I think it's so important too from a emotional point of view and from a psychological point of view is that we speak life by words. And and I'll tell you this quick story. When we started our chamber of commerce in Peoria many years ago, we had a young lady. Her name, she was a doctor, and she had a bad something didn't go right with a dress she bought, and she was hell bent on destroying that company. And I had to pull her aside, and I said, you're going to destroy the company. I said, but why? I said, I understand you got to be. Let's sit down and talk to her. But I said, but you never say, Doc, when white people don't treat you right, that you're going to never do. And her comment is, I'm never going to do business with black people again. I never get treated right. We have to be very careful about what we say. And I think words have so much power. And that's why I think this conference is about creating the environment of opportunity to bring people together so they can see not only where they're at, but they can see where they're trying to get to, and
Mhm.
they can connect with people who will help them get there at the same time. And they'll leave this place, in such a different state than where they came from, because there'll be fun, entertainment, there'll be networking, there'll be just incredible opportunity. And I want people to get on board with this. I really want you to come and experience the conference because one deal can change your life. But when you're around so many major players, so many people, and you never know what God has planned for you. But when you come to the conference, I think, LaDonna, if you come expecting a miracle, I think something happens. I think if you come saying, well, hey, is this going to be another conference? Then I think you're going to end up getting exactly what you expect. But I think if you come to our conference, we have put our hearts and soul into the people. We got Dr. Jeffrey Sterling talking about 72 hours in a day. I'm like, 72 hours in a day? I said, shoot, I feel like I got 4 hours in a day. And you say, I got 72 hours. And his book is all about leveraging your time. Then we have so many
But
other,
Dr. Sterling always sounds like he's just chilling.
yeah,
And he told me the reason
Mhm.
why he can
Mhm.
do that is because he gets everything done in the time that he allots for himself. It's in the
Right.
book.
Right.
it's in the book.
And
Go ahead, Lorenzo.
I agree with everything you're saying, Larry. But I want to say this. Yes, I want to see people attend the conferences that we have. But if you're not showing up to build, and just stay at home. Because some people. I think you mentioned earlier in the conversation about taking a stand. It takes courage to take a stand, and some people don't stand for nothing. And when you invite people into your circle, and you wondering why you can't stay on fire, why your flame keeps going out, that means you got somebody in your circle pissing on your flame, and we got to figure out who those people are, because the downfall of most great men is usually somebody close to them in their circle.
hmm Well, let me just, can I go straight to the matchmaking piece, Larry?
Yeah, absolutely.
So imagine sitting down one on one with decision makers, not the
Mm.
receptionists, not the gatekeepers.
Hmm.
Okay. We're talking about sitting down with the decision makers, the corporate buyers, the agency leaders, the industry insiders who are actively seeking, I did say actively seeking vendors, partners, and collaborators. This is no fluff, guys. We've seen it happen. We have examples from the previous years, where individuals have sat with corporations like the Illinois, what is it, the Illinois State University, Nicor Gas, ComEd, Alwyn. They've sat with these people. I know there's
Mhm.
more, right?
Yeah,
But I don't.
tons and tons
I
of
mean,
more.
imagine sitting across from them with your business, and I'm gonna say this, with your itty bitty business. It doesn't matter how big or small you are. They are interested in getting their newest vendors put onto the roster, but you have to be there. You
Yeah,
have to be there.
Hmm.
absolutely. And really, as a business person, when you got so much going on and you got so many things that you're doing, it's so important for us to take advantage of everything we have. But now you said you got a caller.
We
Let's
got a
take the caller real
caller.
quick.
We got to make it quick. Hey, David. Good morning. What you got? Real? You got like 20 seconds.
I just want to get the name of the gentleman, Nigel.
Nigel
Uh,
Stevens with a PH.
PH is the what is PH for?
Steve.
STEPHENS
Phoenix.
STHEV
with Phoenix Strategies. Yes.
Phoenix Strategies out
Yeah,
of Maryland.
Yes.
Is that in Maryland? Yeah, it's in Maryland.
Yeah, he's a lobbyist in D.C.
I'm always telling him. I'm always thinking he's in D.C. Thank you. You got the information, right?
Yep, yeah, I'm just writing it down. You said his last name is Stevens,
Right,
That's
Stevens.
correct.
Mm-hmm.
and Nigel, Nigel.
That's
Yes.
right. Good job. All right. So go back to the conference. People, you need to register. ILBCC.org is so important to go to. You'll see the conference on the calendar and get registered. It is a 3-day conference at Wind Creek Casino, one of our biggest
In
sponsors.
Chicago.
Right there
In
in
Chicago,
Homewood. It's
yeah.
Chicago to you because you live in Peoria.
Right.
But it's in the South subs for us. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's still right off the expressway. I've passed there and I've enjoyed a lot of different events that we've had there as well. So just make sure you go to ilbcc.org for the conference, which is August 5th through the 7th. And you can call our phone number
at 309-740-4430.
All right. But keep we have 2 minutes left.
Well, let me say
I
this,
want to hear
Ladonna,
this. Yeah.
is that the conference is really just about us coming together with good energy, having a great time, and looking for opportunities. I mean, that's what it's all about. And we know we had the mayor of Waukegan. We're going to be inviting a bunch of other mayors, other key people. It's really a great place to be, to just really connect with people. Look for your opportunity. Look for your shot. Look to take your shot.
You said Nigel's going to be there. Well,
Yeah,
you said you're going to figure it out.
Figure it out.
Okay.
Make sure that Nigel gets it. But when you see our agenda, when you go to our website on Monday, you'll see our agenda and you'll see the incredible amount of time and energy we put into this by having CEOs of major companies and corporations that'll be speaking on the panel. You'll have people from the CTA, Department of Transportation, all kinds of organizations.
All right. Well, we have 1 minute left to tell everybody to go to ilbcc.org. If you missed the cruise, it's like one of those FOMOs. I learned what FOMO is, fear of missing out.
Right.
You don't want to miss this because everything in Washington is going to happen, but you have to take control of your own destiny. Even if you don't own a business and you're thinking of owning one and you lost your job, come out and network with people that are looking for you. Okay, that's ilbcc.org. You've been listening to the Wake Up Show Chicago right here on WVON 1690, where Black media is so important. I'm going to add that to our closing, Larry. I'm LaDonna Ray with Ray Consulting, but make sure you go to our website more than anything, ilbcc.org, and we'll be back next Saturday right here on the Wake Up Show Chicago.
LaDonna Ray.
Yes, sir.
Can I just say, that's LaDonna Ray, Larry Ivory, and Lorenzo. You got to say your name, man.
Lorenzo T. Hughes.
Signing off.
Signing off.
That's right. All right. Bye-bye for now. We'll see you Monday. I'll see you Monday. That's what I mean.
Get ready to wake up to the pulse of progress as we amplify voices, break barriers, and illuminate the path towards a more inclusive tomorrow. Follow us across the socials at The Wake Up Show Chicago. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share. It's The Wake Up Show every Saturday morning at 9, where change begins with every sunrise. Welcome to The Wake Up Show Chicago.
That's the end?
The talk of Chicago is 1690 WVON, Berwyn, Chicago.
Hello, I'm Dr. Ansel Johnson, Clinical Director of Vision Salon Eye Care Associates. Since 1990, we've empowered our community with the knowledge and care to maintain healthy vision for life. From expertly managing diabetic eye disease to offering stylish eyewear from African American designers, along with other well-known brands. Everything we do is centered